Hum inside my heart a little while. Come closer with the honey of your song. Your dance is a code, is a pathway to what's given. I am learning how to listen.
Hello, friends. I'm really excited for today's episode. In this space, we are welcoming Kassandra Nichol today. Kassandra is a multi-passionate woman, entrepreneur, and mama to 3 wildlings. She's a women's empowerment coach, and she helps women build unshakable confidence in themselves and embrace their own authentic expression. Kassandra truly believes every woman is so worthy of feeling safe, confident, and beautiful in their own skin. She has been on her own self-love journey for some time, and she's gained so much wisdom from both lived experience, navigating both grief and motherhood, as well as from the various trainings she's taken part in over the years. So before we begin, may we all take some time to ground into this space and into ourselves. Let's begin by taking a deep inhale through the nose. And exhale out the mouth. Thank you all so much. Let's begin. Good morning, Kassandra. Thank you so much for joining me here in this space. It's such an honor to be connecting with you further on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Of course. Let's jump into it. I'd love to hear more about you and your story and how you arrived in this space doing what you are doing now.
Yeah, sounds good. So, yeah, my name is Kassandra Nichol. I am, I would say, a multi-passionate woman and entrepreneur. I am also the mama to 3 little wildlings. They keep me busy. And I'm also a women empowerment coach. I help women build unshakable confidence in themselves and learn to embrace the entirety of who they are. I feel like it's so important, and every woman is so worthy to feel safe and confident and beautiful in their own skin. So this is the work that I do, and I'm so extremely passionate about. So yeah, a little bit about me.
Wow, that's quite the powerful introduction. Thank you so much for sharing that. Um, I would love to hear more about your 3 wildlings. Or how did you get to be, was that kind of an inspiration that brought you into this work? Was stepping into motherhood and through that rite of passage?
It's definitely a part for sure. There's a few different pieces for sure that brought me into that, but motherhood has been, yes, huge part of this journey for me. I was going to get into that portion later too, but I feel like once I had my children, like I had this huge identity crisis where I'm like, who the fuck am I? What do I want? What do I enjoy? Like, who is Kassandra? So I've been on this journey of like self-discovery and learning who I am and how I want to show up in this world and how I want to mother my children. And it's been, yeah, it's been a wild journey. Definitely like this initiation for me for sure.
Thank you so much. I feel like so many mothers go through that identity crisis, as you said, during that initiation process, where all of a sudden who we thought we were is thrown out the window, and we have to figure out who we are while also taking care of these other beings who are also figuring out who they are.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for answering the call and for keep multiplying and now having 3 wildlings. That's a big task to undertake.
Oh, yeah. Never a dull moment in this house. That's for sure. Yeah. And I
Um,
feel for me too, which I was going to speak to as well, about 7 years ago. So just before I became a mom, I lost my own mother to cancer. And I truly believe that was for me like the biggest catalyst to like my spiritual journey. And I became pregnant with my son shortly after she passed. So it was like this one like extreme low to this like huge high, and learning how to like, yeah, navigate this new journey in pregnancy and motherhood without my own mom. And it led me to question like how, like, I got to nurture myself now. How do I do that? How do I love myself and give back to myself in the ways that my mom now can't? And learning how to navigate this new journey without her. So it was really, yeah, it really was definitely like the start of that journey for me, and just coming home to myself. So I've been doing a lot of work on that and self love, and learning, you know, the importance of self care and what that means to me, and how to give back to myself in that way. And that again kind of led me to this work that I do, and helping women move through challenges in life and empower them to, you know, see the light in darkness, and to, you know, claim all parts of themselves, to find compassion for self, especially in those trying times in life that we all go through, right? And learning how to give back to ourselves and be gentle with ourselves, and not always, I think, seeking that like that help or that validation outside of ourselves, and learning how to give back to ourselves in that way. It's so powerful when you can do that and give back to yourself in that way. So yeah, that's definitely a huge piece of the work that I do.
Wow. Yeah, thank you so much for explaining in that way. Um, that must have been so devastating to lose your mother right before your first pregnancy, and not being able to have that support or that guidance from that person that is, usually the one that helps us to move through that rite of passage. And I can see, or what it sounds like is that without her around, you were able to go inward and really find that guidance from within and connect with your own intuition, which is so beautiful. And so I'm wondering, was there other people or resources that helped you to go inward and connect with your own inner compass as you were going through that time?
Yeah, definitely. Like I'm so grateful for my village. I always say that. Like I have so many amazing women in my corner, and I believe like everything happens for a reason. I believe, you know, people come into our lives for a certain reason. So I have a huge circle of women in my life that I'm so grateful for, and definitely help me navigate that trying time in my life. And for me, over the course of these, whatever, 8 years now since she's been gone almost, leaning into sisterhood, finding my people, and really recognizing who I feel my best around, who I can be my truest, most authentic self. And I've led a lot of women's circles as well. Like I feel there's so much power in women coming together, and that's been so incredibly healing for me, and leaning on those supports and knowing that don't have to go at it alone. My whole life I've felt, even though I'm surrounded by so many people, I still have this feeling sometimes inside of being alone, even though that I know that's not true, and that comes from, you know, my own past conditioning and the way I was brought up too. But I know that's not true. So learning to um, yeah, that I'm not alone, that I don't have to go at this alone. And even the women I work with, you know, reminding them of that, like, you're not alone and there are supports out there. So leaning on my sisters and my friends has been, yeah, just truly such a gift for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. I find that that's so common in our modern paradigm where particularly women, and I'm sure men feel this as well. It's just I identify and I am in a woman's body, so this feels more close to home for myself. But I feel like there's just so much external pressure of doing it all by ourselves, and that we're seeing that now manifesting as extreme burnout or fatigue or whatever it may be, anxiety. um, and so, yeah, it's so powerful to recognize like the power within, but also the need for that village, as you said, or that community. And for myself, like this is kind of a thread I've been exploring deeper. I grew up in a very large city where there wasn't really a lot of, I felt like, authenticity in my friend group. And now I live in a smaller town. I've lived here for over a decade, and I'm really establishing more of like that mycelial network, I call it, of those like true beings that nourish me on all levels, and particularly this idea of sisterhood. And so I'd love to explore that further with you, like in terms of like, what does sisterhood really mean for you, and how do you engage with your sisters?
Yeah, it's a great question. So um, I really feel like in the past year, I've been really calling in my people. I have a few really close friends, but just, yes, calling in more people that have similar mindsets, people that are, have that growth mindset, that are wanting to grow and expand and learn. And um, it's interesting, like I've been doing so much work on myself, especially these past few years. I feel like I've really stepped more into my power. I know who I am, and it feels really good. So surrounding myself with more people that help inspire me and lift me up. I know I get to this point in my life, or I've gotten to this point in my life where I don't have the time or energy to give to people that aren't willing to give back to me, if that makes sense. So been really mindful of like how I spend and exert my energy, and just, yeah, surrounding myself with more empowering, inspiring women has been so powerful for me, and having that safe space where I can just be myself. I can laugh, I can be silly, I can make a fool out of myself, and nobody cares. They accept you for who you are. And it's so incredibly freeing, because at the end of the day, like, one of our core needs as human beings is to be seen, to be heard. And I think so many of us from a young age didn't always receive that. And it shows up in our own patterns and our conditioning as we grow, and our belief systems that we inherit. So it's just interesting to see that so many people, and women especially, are reclaiming their power and using their voice. So I think for me, that's been huge, and surrounding myself with those people that can truly witness me, and also just bringing loving acceptance to like who I am, and not giving a shit what people think about me too. Like, there is power in that, and also seeing other women that are stepping more into that and being themselves, showing up online as their true authentic self. I think it's just so inspiring, and inspires me to be myself more as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that was amazing. That definitely answered my question and beyond, and brought up another aspect that I have been again exploring a lot recently, particularly with various students who have come through my offerings, but then also just myself. It's something that I've been recognizing as these students are bringing it up. I'm like, oh yeah, that I carry that too, and that's that aspect of being a people pleaser. And so I really love what you just brought up of, okay, where do I really want to spend my time and energy? And so with your guidance, when you were working with women through self-empowerment, how do you help them navigate that role of being a people pleaser?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that can look, different for a lot of people, but really getting to the root of where that comes from, like where in childhood that you felt you needed to act the part or be something that you weren't. If your parents wanted you to be a certain way or play a certain sport, I did this myself. My dad has a background in Taekwondo, and I I didn't love it. I got to a certain point where I got older and I had other interests and stuff, but I felt this, like, that I was going to disappoint him if I didn't, carry on with this. And of course, there was disappointment, but there was acceptance and letting that go. So I think so many of us, we grow up with these beliefs of, you know, we tie our worth to how we show up for other people, instead of like honoring our truth and what we actually desire. So I think along the way we become so disconnected from what we truly want. So I help, I guess, going backwards here, just getting people to connect to the root of that, where that comes from, where that showed up in their life before, and then kind of rewiring, retraining their brain to focus on what it is they actually want. And again, that comes from that work of building that, I guess, trust and safety within themselves, safety and trust to fully be and embody who they are, who they're meant to be, and focusing, I guess, the mind on what they want, instead of focusing on what everyone else wants from them, if that makes sense. So yeah, I do a lot of mindset work and kind of reframing, restructuring those beliefs, and helping them see things from a different perspective or lens, if you will. Sometimes we get so caught up in our own shit that it can be really hard to kind of see a way through. So that's kind of where I can come in and help them kind of pull back to see, yeah, where these beliefs come from and how we can take steps to create new belief systems that are going to support them and, yeah, step more fully into their power and what they truly want for themselves.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I got chills when you're talking about that. And what came to mind was engaging with that eagle eye vision of how do we take that broader perspective, that broader viewpoint of what it is we want. That is such a hard question to answer. What do we
Yeah.
truly want? Yeah, I've been personally journaling about that recently, and there's so many times I ask myself that, and then I'm just staring at the page blankly, and I'm like, I don't even know. It's hard, particularly with this aspect of being a people pleaser and a deep empath and a deep feeler. It's like, what is it that's truly me? And then how do I guide myself towards that? And so if there are people who are listening, and, for myself, I'd love to hear more, how do you help people find that orientation within themselves of what they truly desire, what they truly want?
Yeah, good question. So I really like to incorporate different aspects in this like coaching container. So I do a lot of mindset work, but I also bring in a lot of embodiment work as well, because, going back to my own yoga background, mind body connection, like you can't focus solely on the mindset work alone if you're disassociated from your own body and what's happening within. So I do a lot of visualization, a lot of connecting to your body, because we store so much in our bodies. And I think just getting people to connect more to their body and what's happening within is huge for a lot of people, because so many of us are so disconnected from our bodies, from our emotions and what is happening within. And sometimes that can block us from actually, receiving the downloads or the information that we need to, set goals or manifestations, whatever that looks like for you in the work that you do. So I do a lot of visualization, getting people to turn their attention inward and expand their mind to see what's possible. So again, I do a lot of guided visuals. One of my favorite exercises is to do like a 5-year visioning. So like in 5 years from now, like where do you see yourself? Like, what are you doing? How do you feel? Really getting people to connect to the emotion, I think is so huge. And then the rest is just kind of background, just creating or painting this picture of what they want from themselves. Going back to like that focus on, figuring out what we want. It's so interesting how us as humans are so wired to focus on what we don't want. It's like, why the hell do we do this to ourselves and focusing on the lack, right? So it's just learning how to flick that switch and start focusing on what we want instead, how we want to feel, how we want to show up in this life, what we want to experience. And it takes time, it takes practice, but really starting to shift into that and focusing on what you want, because like attracts like, what you focus on expands. So if you're always focused on the lack or what you don't want, you're going to attract more of those experiences into your reality. So getting people to kind of shift their perspective and start focusing on what it is they want, and not only focusing on that, but knowing and trusting that it's possible for them, I think is a really huge step as well, actually believing that it's possible for them.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that response. There's something I would love to jump back and circle back to, and what you were just talking about is like it sounded like this kind of deep inner work. And just from my own personal experience, when I've done that deep inner work, it relates back to shadow work. And I don't know if this is a particular term that you use with your offerings and whatnot, but when we go deep in ourselves and we're recognizing like those places, as you said, where we need to maybe build more confidence, we start to notice those things that are really truly holding us back and how they really are created by ourselves. And so when people come to face those darker aspects of themselves, how do you guide them through that, through transforming that energy?
Yeah, that's again going to look different for each person and what they're working through, for sure. But I do a lot of, again, like the visualizations I think are so important, like getting people like to turn inward and bringing, first of all, like acknowledging that we all have shadow, right? Without the shadow, we wouldn't have the light, vice versa. You know what I mean? So acknowledging, first of all, their shadow, that we have this part of ourselves, and then bringing acceptance to this part of ourselves, because without the shadow, without these parts of us, they make us who we are, but we don't have to attach to that story. So bringing this acceptance and understanding kind of where these shadowy aspects come from, and then doing work to kind of heal that and move through that. Through visualization, through embodiment work. I do a lot of like movement, lots of like shaking, releasing kind of that hold of that energy, I think is really important. So I do, not only like the mindset work, but the body work I feel is so important. But just circling back to that acceptance piece, I think that's huge for people, just acknowledging that we do have this part of ourselves and that it's okay. It makes us human. It doesn't make us bad or wrong. It's just, sending love to these parts of ourselves that we carry shame around, and hold these beliefs, and knowing that we don't have to carry this. We don't have to hold this and let this be our identity, if that makes sense, that there is light in this, and understanding these parts of ourselves. So I think it's just coming back to that, I guess, self-compassion piece, and understanding, that without darkness, there wouldn't be light. Without light, there wouldn't be darkness. You know what I mean? So it kind of comes full circle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the necessary balance. Thank you so much for voicing that and for bringing that forth. As you shared, something came to mind, the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and that, as there's a few points that really came forth when you were sharing. There's four agreements, obviously, but two that really stood out to me in my mind was, don't take things personally and always do your best. And we've talked quite a bit about community so far, and something that I recognize within myself is, there's a potency to doing this work by myself, but then going back within a community and having those mirrors reflect back to me those areas that might need a little bit more love or a little bit more growth, and the highlighting of those stories, as you said, that I keep telling myself. And so I'd love to hear more on that community aspect, and if that is something that you bring into your work, and how that plays into what you offer, but then also into your own personal story. You talked about how sisterhood has been so powerful for you. So have there been some certain mirrors that have really stood out for you, and how did that shift your paradigm?
Yeah, for sure. So I truly believe, like, your outer world is truly a reflection of your inner worlds, right? So you're going to attract, experiences into your reality that mirror kind of what's going on inside of you. But then sometimes somebody comes into your life that helps you, again, see things in a new light. So I feel like, I don't know, the more you work on yourself and bringing that loving acceptance to who you are, you're going to draw more of that same energy into your life, those people that are going to help you kind of bring that shadow to light, and to also love you for who you are, shadowy bits and all. So again, yes, it's coming back to like the sisterhood, surrounding yourself with people that too, have their own demons, or whatever you want to call them, right? We all have a shadow self, but when people can see you, the shadow, the light, all of it, and accept you for who you are, it's like, okay, people can accept this part of myself. Can I accept this? Like, can I bring this loving acceptance to myself? Can I see and love myself the way others see and love me, which is truly really powerful. And I have found that in my own life, certain people that will make certain compliments or compliment me on the way I do things. And it's interesting, like, the things people say, and then I have my own belief, or like limiting belief around that, and it's like, oh wow, like, people don't see me the way I see myself in this way. So it's really healing to surround yourself by people who truly see you when you can't fully see yourself, if that makes sense. So it's so healing, I feel, just surrounding yourself with those people. um yeah.
Wow, yeah, thank you so much. I feel like you must play that role for people often in the work that you offer. So again, just thank you so much for doing what you do and for being that person for people who maybe don't have that within their immediate community. It's amazing what like the beacons of light can inspire within others. So I'm sure that when people connect with you, then they're able to maybe find that a little bit deeper around the people that are already with them. So again, thank you so much. I I would like to circle back now again. In your very first share, you brought up this term unshakable confidence. And I'd love to explore that term more and hear from you what exactly you believe that means.
Okay. Yeah, good question. So I feel like unshakable confidence. Let's break that down a little bit, because at the end of the day, as human beings, there are going to be experiences in our life that challenge us, and there's going to be those limiting beliefs and those thoughts that come up from time to time. But over time, I feel like the more love and acceptance you bring to who you are and truly embodying all the aspects that make you who you are, building that trust and safety within yourself and that confidence to show up in your full expression, over time, you are going to build resilience. So that unshakable part, that really comes down to resilience, building resilience so that you're better able to adapt to challenging life circumstances. You are easier to, I don't like the term bounce back, but in a roundabout way, kind of. So building resilience to life's challenges, being able to, hold more, but also, loving yourself through those challenging times and having the tools and the knowledge to be able to support yourself through that. And sometimes that means asking for help too, which I feel like a lot of us, especially as women, have a really hard time doing, is asking for help. So yeah, that unshakable piece is really about building resilience, building trust and safety within yourself so you can really hold the duality of this human experience.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, I love that aspect of the resiliency and how do we create that resiliency within ourselves and that aspect of asking for help. It's such a big one that, as you said, I feel women and also men really have a hard time with asking for help. We're kind of in this paradigm where we're all under this ego trip where we just need to do it all, be it all. And social media maybe hasn't had the best foothold in promoting that as well. But as you said, social media is also kind of this double-edged sword where there's a lot of people who are really sharing authentically through that, and sharing their voices, which is really beautiful. And so I'd love to hear more about this idea of resiliency and how you find resiliency ties into that aspect of embracing the entirety of who you are.
Yeah, good question. So, I feel when you build this resilience, as a human being, like you're able to hold more. So coming back again to that, the shadow, learning how to embrace your shadow, to also, bring in the light too. So again, coming back to that like duality, holding both. And that doesn't mean that like, you build this resilience and then you're just like unshaked, like you can't, you're going to have moments where you break down too, right? That's part of being human. We have challenges that we face, but I think, yeah, being able to see different perspectives, sorry, and to embrace like all of these aspects that make you who you are, and not worrying about what people think about you, like building this safety to show up as you are, to speak your truth, to truly be seen and witnessed for who you are. And this like inner knowing that it's okay, you might not be for everybody, and that's okay. So again, building that resilience to almost like shield or protect you from that like outer world, so that people's opinions and perspectives of you are not going to shake you. You can just like slough it off, right? Which is so hard for a lot of us to do, because I feel like so many of us are very empathic beings. We really especially as women, like we overthink things. So if someone said something, we really like read into that. So again, that resilience aspect, like not taking that on, just being like, oh, okay, well, they don't like me. That's all right. Moving on. I'm just going to continue to be myself, because the more myself I am, the more I allow myself to be myself and show up as me, I'm going to attract, those clients I'm meant to work with. I'm going to attract those relationships that I desire. So I think that really is what it boils down to, is building that resilience so that you also don't take on everyone else's shit. And yeah, you just get to a point where you just don't care. That's kind of where I'm at in my life right now, and showing up bigger in the space that I'm in, and just being okay with that, and not worrying as much about what people think about me, and just like doing my thing. And it feels really good.
Amazing. I love seeing you do your thing. So thank you for doing it. That is such an important point to bring up of women and our general tendency to overthink situations and the anxiety that's developed from that. And so I know you were talking about earlier different practices that you bring in for moving through energy and whatnot. And I'd love to hear more about this mind-body connection that you brought up earlier and how that role of the overthinker plays into that. Do you think that there are these mental imbalances that arise, and then how do you notice that they are stored or play out within the body?
Yeah, good question. So um yeah, definitely. Like I noticed a huge shift in my clients. Like I always start my sessions doing a bit of grounding, because I find like, we're always rushing into like, a call or this or that, or coming from our busy lives into this space. So I always take the time to ground my clients, and just even getting them to place their hands like on their physical body, getting out of their mind, and just, yeah, coming into their body. And after that, I always just notice a huge shift in their energy. And um, yeah, I find like their mind is clearer. They're able to kind of vocalize and share more with me after taking the time to really land in their body. I find so many of us are very much in our heads. And in our society, like we were kind of talking about how we're forced, or we focus so much on like productivity and doing, that it takes us away from truly being. So we're very much a masculine, like living in this masculine society of always wanting to do more, produce more. But again, that leads to burnout and really disconnects us from our bodies. So I do a lot of work with bringing women back into connection with their divine feminine, which I've been seeing show up in a lot of the work that I do with the women in my corner lately. And it's just interesting to see that. So I've been really encouraging more movements. I love to dance. I feel like dance and these embodiment practices are so powerful in helping bring women back into their body and embrace, their sensuality, their sexuality, and that playfulness. I feel like we've lost touch with that part of ourselves in our society. So bringing people into their body and, connecting to that playful, creative, life force energy that is so needed and can really change the trajectory of someone's life. When we can learn to balance these energies, it really makes a difference. So that body work, I feel, is so incredibly powerful for people, especially women that are operating more in their masculine.
Wow. Okay. There's
A
a
lot.
few questions that came up. So now, which path are we taking? I'd love to hear more about this aspect of the divine feminine, and you were going into the sensuality and the playfulness of it. But I know that that's a word that's used often in kind of the wellness and holistic area these days. And so I'd love to hear more about your specific ideas about divine feminine, how that manifests for us in our day-to-day lives, and how we can connect with it.
Yeah. So again, coming back to that, like I'm going to use the shifting of the seasons for an example. So it was the spring equinox this past week, and it can be a very inspiring time. We can start to feel more energy, more motivation coming to life, planting seeds of intention and working towards goals, and that's great. But again, it has almost this like masculine energy. It's like the start of that like energetic new year where we're all like excited and racing towards like what's next and getting excited about that, which is great. But I feel along the way we need to ground that energy, and that's very feminine, like that feminine urge to slow down, to rest, to um this sense of renewal. And spring is a very fertile time, so it is about new beginnings and birthing new ideas and creations. So I think there needs to be that, again, that balance and learning to honor our bodies and what we're needing. So I was working with a client this week, for example, and we were talking about routines and structures and the way she starts her day. And one question that I often ask myself first thing when I start my day is, what do I need in this moment? You know, sometimes I need to go back to bed and rest a little bit more. Sometimes I crave movement, or I need to eat right away. So really connecting to like, what does my body need? That is very, feminine, just really nurturing. How can I nurture myself in this moment? So that's been showing up for a lot of the clients that I'm working with right now. And so prioritizing that rest and listening to the needs of the body, and also inviting in that space for play. I feel like so many of us are so disconnected to our little sweet inner child, more play, more fun, not taking life so seriously. Life is meant to be enjoyed. We're meant to live and not, spend our lives working and then going to bed at night. You know what I mean? So even for me in my own life, I've been so focused on like work and different aspects that are very masculine. So I'm like, okay, I just need to stop and just like get down on the floor and play with my kids, or go outside and connect in nature. How can I bring myself down and connect to these little people and to my own inner child that needs love and attention too? So these are all very feminine aspects that I feel so many of us women are disconnected from and are just craving to connect back with. And you can see that in a lot of people that experience burnout or get sick often. It's like, where's the imbalance? Are you living in your masculine, or can you soften into your feminine and learn to flow and adapt to all the changes in life rather than resisting and pushing or forcing your way through? So yeah, that's, I think, a really important thing to ponder for sure.
Thank you so much for explaining that and taking us with you through that. There was something else in your previous share that you had brought up, was this aspect of being versus doing, and I'd love to hear more on how that idea ties into the divine feminine.
Yeah, so again, like being is feminine, like doing is a very masculine aspect. And I mean, in our life, we got shit to do, of course, especially if you have kids like myself. I have 3 kids, so I'm always like, on the move, on the go. So at the end of the day, like I crave space to just like be still. And sometimes that looks like sitting in a meditation, maybe having a nice long bath and just taking that time to just be, to focus on me and my breath, and to actually hear my own thoughts. And I'm not going to lie, I'm not perfect, and I struggle with this too. We get caught up in life and routine and structure, and it can be so hard when you're in it. But for me, for example, when I'm out of balance or out of alignment in my life, my skin breaks out. I get a rash, eczema flares up. So I've been struggling actually this past while. I've had a lot of things going on in my life right now. So I've been really taking the time to like, check in with myself and what I need, what's not working for me, and really taking that time to reflect and allow myself to be more and just find more pockets of stillness in my day, because we're all busy. But how often do we spend time on our phones scrolling on Instagram or watching reels, right? It's like, can you take 5 minutes to just like sit and just like take a few deep breaths, or go sit in the sun? I used to think that I needed like a whole hour to do a practice, but with 3 kids, that doesn't always happen. So 5 minutes, like here and there throughout my day, I'll take it. So I think we overthink this so much, but even taking 5 minutes for yourself throughout the day, taking some time at the end of the day to just like ground your energy, maybe reflect on your day and what went well, what didn't go so well, and just like, finding acceptance for where you are, finding gratitude, which is a really profound practice. So yeah, I think sprinkling in that like little bits of self-care throughout the day and constantly checking in with yourself is really huge, but it takes practice for sure, because again, we live in a very, very busy society where we're always on the move. So I guess my best advice for anyone listening is just to really take that time to fill your cup each day, whatever that looks like for you, especially first thing in the morning. You know, how you start your day really sets the tone for how your day is going to play out. I've really recognized that for myself. So yeah, I definitely take that time for myself first thing.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the morning ritual is such an important aspect to include in our day-to-day lives, and how can we make a little ritual out of that where it is really nourishing and sets that pace for the rest of the day. So thank you for bringing that forth. And I have a question. It's getting a little bit more personal now, but specifically for you as a mother and a business owner and a guide and a facilitator, how do you find that balance of the beer versus the doer?
That's a great question. And it's something, if I'm being completely honest, I'm still working on. Balance has been a huge, huge thing for me in my journey, learning to find that balance. And I find this year, like I've been really finding more of that flow. But again, there's going to be seasons in life where, you know, that's going to shift, especially, you know, if you are a parent, you know, your kids have their own needs, and as they grow they're going to have different needs, and each day, each week is going to look different. So um, for me, I do a lot of journaling. We're all different in the ways in which we process things too. Like I'm very much an outward processor, so I need to talk to a friend. I need to vocalize what's happening within me, or writing in my journal. So I do take a lot of time to process my thoughts, so that I'm not holding it all, especially at the end of the day. Like I always keep a journal by my bedside, and if there's anything that's on my mind, I just get it out. And honestly, it helps so much. It's just like a big dump at the end of the day, just like releasing it all onto the pages, so that I can, you know, my mind can be clear when I go to bed at night. Um, and for me, again, circling back to that asking for help. I used to struggle with this so much, and I wanted to be seen as somebody that could do it all. I could hold it all, like that super mom. But I've released that story because I don't have to do it alone. I have support in my life. I have a village. So why the hell would I not use them if they're willing to support me? But I used to feel like a burden, and I would hate to ask for help, but I've had to do a lot of work around that. So asking for help has been huge. Recently, I've been calling in a second childcare person so I can have an extra day to work, or just book appointments, or just do nothing. And that's okay. And I did find somebody. So I'm grateful for my village, asking for help. I take time for myself at the end of the day too. I love like my bath ritual. I always just make time to fill my cup in that way and just nourish myself. With a tea and a bath, and just taking that time to really like ground my energy at the end of the day. Because for me, with 3 kids, my dinner time hour is really stressful for me. So I'm very like, I'm just buzzing by the time the kids go to bed. I'm just like, oh my God, it's a lot. So I do a lot of like grounding at the end of the day, and just, yeah, setting myself up for the next day, to do it all again. But again, sprinkling in that little bits of like self-care throughout the day, and asking for help, I guess. Those are like, yeah, gold for me.
Thank you so much. So many potent practices that you engage with and that you're sharing. So thank you for all that inspiration. When the last couple shares you explained, there's this one, I want to call it an excuse that keeps coming up, that I know I often say, and I hear other, particularly women, say often, and that it's, I don't have enough time. And
Mm.
so I'm sure that you've come across this in your work. And when women say that to you, or if that is something that comes forth in your own mind, how do you navigate that statement?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, I think so many of us, myself included, have used that excuse, but it's bullshit. It's a lie we tell ourselves. You know, I guess if someone were to say that to me, like a client that I'm working with, I would help them identify, you know, what is taking away their time. Are there tasks that they can delegate, you know, to someone else? What can they remove from their plate so that they can make more time for the things that are important to them and that are going to benefit their overall health and well-being? Like I mentioned earlier, you know, how many of us spend, you know, however long during the day, like scrolling on Instagram or, um, all of these excuses again, right? That we could take that time and put it towards something that's actually going to benefit us in the long run. So I guess just learning how to prioritize, I think that's a huge thing for people, is people get so scattered and have all these things that they don't even know where to start. So I think learning how to prioritize their time and the things that actually really need to get done that day, and letting go of the rest. So for me, for example, I haven't done this practice in a while, but it's a really great practice, especially for those who have a very busy plate, is like, okay, write 3 things down in the morning that you need to get done, like priority, I need to do, and then anything else that gets done is a bonus. But if you get those 3 things done, amazing. So learning how to prioritize that time. And also, like, a great question to ask yourself too is, okay, I don't have the time for self-care, I don't have time for myself. It's like, okay, well, do you have the time to get sick, deal with illness or injuries? Because I've found, for me personally in my own life, when I don't prioritize that time for myself, I burn out. I get exhausted, my skin breaks out, I get sick. So can you make time for yourself? Would you rather make time for that space, or time to get sick where you need to take time off work and then you're forced to slow down? It's like, why do we wait until we reach this like breaking point to actually like change something in our life that needs to shift, right? It's so true. I feel like we're all guilty of this. But why does it take getting to that point to do something different? So that would be a good reframe, and how I would present that to a client.
Thank you for sharing that. And I have one more question for you. I myself am very, very guilty of this. I often overwork myself to that breaking point. And so, as a guide and as a facilitator, what is one piece of advice you would give women who are on that path of like the snowball effect and they're on the way to that breaking point? What would you share with them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, just again, honestly, like, if I was working with that Nicole, they were dumping like all the things on me and all the things they need to do and are overwhelmed about, I would just get them to stop, like take a moment, close their eyes, like take a deep breath, and just coming back into their body. I feel when we get in that spiral of like all these things, it's like we're on autopilot, and it's like we're not machines. We're not built to constantly be doing and creating. Like, there are seasons for everything. So really coming back to our body and just like grounding ourselves like in our body, in this physical being, instead of being this in this like autopilot mode, I think is really important. And again, coming back to that, like prioritizing what matters the most. Like, what do we need to get done? Is there anything else we can release from our plate? Is there, can we ask for help? Are there other resources that can support us in, getting done what needs to be done, right? So coming back to that, receiving, which I feel a lot of women have a hard time doing, is allowing themselves to receive the support that they desire. So there's a lot of different ways that we can go about that and look at that, but that's kind of where I would start, is like the grounding, just getting people in their bodies so they're not just living from that like autopilot mode, which so many of us do, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you. It's so true in our modern paradigm. We're kind of stuck in this rat race of go, 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 and it's amazing what just pausing and taking a deep breath can do for ourselves. So thank you so much, Kassandra, for everything that you shared today and for coming on here and sharing space with me and sharing all your wisdom. It was such an honor to connect with you a little bit deeper.
Thanks so much for having me. This is a great conversation for sure.
Wow, what a inspiring chat with Kassandra that was. Thank you again, Kassandra, so much for coming into this space and sharing so much about authentic sisterhood and how we can find true healing through the village that we surround ourselves with. If you would like to stay connected with Kassandra, you can find her on Instagram at kassandra.nichol. That is KASSANDRA period NICHOL. My name is Danya I am the lead facilitator and founder of Wild Song Yoga School. Thank you all so much for tuning in and for stepping into this space of learning and growing with these potent wisdom keepers. It is a deep honor and a deep blessing to be here curating and magically weaving all of this knowledge for you. So thank you so much. From my heart to each and every one of yours, namaste.